One introduction RAWSEP view the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHXZX, December 2nd, 2025 ACIP meetings, December 4th and 5th, 2025 threaten vaccine access. In Webisode 57DHXZX1, Wisconsin medical professionals RAWSEP view medical professionals are deliberately flaunting RFK Junior Strictures and training each other to deal with vaccine hesitancy by publicizing the fact the vaccines prevent disease. 2. RFK Jr. wants to delay the Hepatitis B vaccine. 3. The Vaccinated dead make their ACIP debut. What happens at FDA CBER does not stay at FDA CBER. 4. Bird flu vaccine. Inside the bird flu vaccine trial for monk seals. 5. Hepatitis B vaccine. The virus that took my father could become a greater threat. 6. Florida and Georgia, as well as Alabama, Indiana, and Texas Republicans are misreading what suburban voters want. 7. Georgia Ringgold RAWSEP view a Democrat to fill the Marjorie Taylor Greene seat. From the article headline, we have become so divided. Georgia district prepares for life after Marjorie Taylor Greene. Republicans and Democrats alike look to fill House seat of the congressional firebrand when she departs in 2026. 8. Tennessee Democrat Aftyn Behn versus Republican Mike Van Epps in race for a Tennessee House seat. Today, December 2nd, 2025 Johnson and Trump try to avoid an upset House loss in Tennessee. Speaker Mike Johnson put Trump on speakerphone during a Monday stop in the state, underscoring the unusual amount of national attention on a House special election. 9. Tennessee, what to watch for in the last big election of 2025. A special election for a House seat in Tennessee was supposed to be an easy Republican victory, but national spending and Democratic enthusiasm have made it an unusually high-profile race. 10. Virginia Democrat flips seat in state legislature by taking on data centers. John McAuliff won on November 4th, 2025 against a Republican by focusing on something affecting all his constituents: the cost of energy. 11. United Kingdom houseplants near radiators do not thrive, heat pumps instead. 12. United Kingdom pollution from landfills. 13. United Kingdom, the cost of pharmaceuticals. 14, 15, 16, and 17 headlines. Main content. 1. Wisconsin medical professionals RAWSEP view medical professionals are deliberately flaunting RFK Junior Strictures and training each other to deal with vaccine hesitancy by publicizing the fact the vaccines prevent disease. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Infectious disease update conference 2025 honoring a legacy, advancing a mission. December 19th to 20th, 2025 Wisconsin Dells. Wisconsin frontline providers play a vital role in managing both common and emerging infections. This conference addresses the urgent need for accurate up-to-date information on infectious diseases. The event offers evidence-based insights and actionable strategies to improve patient outcomes and public health. Register now. Key topics include antibiotic stewardship and combating resistance, vaccine preventable diseases, and addressing hesitancy, practical approaches to infectious disease care in primary and hospital settings. 2. RFK Jr. wants to delay the Hepatitis B vaccine. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. KFF Health News, Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. In this edition, KFF Health News original stories. 1. They need a ventilator to stay alive. Getting one can be a nightmare. 2. Feds promised radical transparency, but are withholding rural health fund applications. 3. RFK Jr. wants to delay the Hepatitis B vaccine. Here is what parents need to know. 4. Political cartoon. A big job. Pharmaceuticals. 5. UK zero tariff deal on pharma will bring more jobs to the United States Capitol. Watch. 6. Congress may punt funding bills to January as another shutdown looms. Public health. 8. US opted out of World AIDS Day, frustrating activists on the frontline health industry. 9. CMS to end Medicare experiment meant to fix kidney dialysis shortage. 11. Viewpoints. Democrats must seize this health care opportunity. Pharmacy deserts are a public health failure. 3. The Vaccinated dead make their ACIP debut. What happens at FDA CBER does not stay at FDA CBER. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Newsletter from Dr. Angela Rasmussen, editor at the publication named Vaccine. Since 2021 December 1st, 2025, I should not say these guys are not experts since they both are extensively experienced with making false claims about deaths caused by COVID vaccines. I am candid about being decidedly unimpressed by Food and Drug Administration, FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation, and the Research CBER Director Vinay Prasad regulatory and scientific contributions to date, particularly his recent claim that there are at least 10 children whose deaths were caused by COVID vaccination. Without providing evidence that this is true, he nonetheless plans to overhaul FDA CBER to change evaluation practices for the annual flu vaccine, COVID vaccines given in combination, and vaccines for pregnant women. This will likely result in reduced access to essential vaccines. The Vinay Prasad management philosophy, fake collegial academic, but also authoritarian, and his vision for a future in which no vaccines are able to meet standards for licensure. Prasad has failed to support the claim that justifies crippling the CBER regulatory capacity. He presents no evidence whatsoever that COVID vaccines killed these kids, besides his assurances that myocarditis, sniffing anti-vax attack dog, and senior advisor for clinical sciences Tracy Beth Hogue unearthed proof in the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System (VERS). The VERS is a passive surveillance system for collecting voluntarily reported vaccine injuries or deaths, so it can detect signals indicating a significant adverse event, but it also can contain a lot of reports that are unverifiable, inaccurate, or do not have anything to do with vaccination. VERS is useful for finding leads about vaccine safety, but it is not reliable on its own. Most people are not aware of that, so anti-vaxxers have misrepresented VERS data for years as evidence of an unchecked or even intentionally suppressed epidemic of vaccine safety issues. VERS is monitored by both FDA and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC). Vaccine safety monitoring is critical to the core functions of both the FDA Food and Drug Regulation and CDC Public Health and Immunization, so both agencies conduct surveillance and investigate safety signals when a safety signal is Detected both FDA and CDC scientists and clinicians will perform a detailed follow-up investigation with extensive review of medical histories, clinical case reports, and data from other sources like the Vaccine Safety Data Link VSD, which uses electronic health records data that are more verifiable and standardized than VEERS for adverse event reporting. VEERS is the beginning of a long and rigorous process to collect and analyze reliable data, which then allows the government to make informed decisions about its immunization program and public health guidance. CDC and product licensure and labeling. FDA. The CDC provides guidance in part through recommendations decided by majority vote at meetings of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP. The ACIP recommendations are also major determinants of vaccine access, since they determine which vaccines clinicians should give to their patients and how insurance companies reimburse them. The ACIP is a panel of what are theoretically independent experts, but who are now mostly either unqualified yes men or anti-vaxxers. Two members from the latter camp, supply chain operations expert Retsef Levi and self-proclaimed mRNA vaccine inventor Robert Malone, immediately weighed in on the Prasad claims that COVID vaccines killed kids. Predictably, they did not like that. Actual experts all commented that Prasad needs to produce evidence that vaccines caused these deaths before making such broad structural changes to vaccine regulation at CBER that it blocks access to some vaccines altogether if vaccines are killing kids. According to Prasad, the fact that he is the nation's top vaccine regulator and is famously a proponent of evidence-based medicine excuses him from actually providing any evidence to prove it. These arguments are scientifically worthless. There is no science loophole. I am aware of that, says you are exempt from needing to back up your claims with data because you podcast your way into the CBER director office. However, seeing these two chime in reminded me of the joint responsibility for vaccine safety. It also reminded me of the fact that ACIP is meeting this Thursday and Friday, and then I got a bad feeling about what might go down. Tracy Hogue just dropped a VEERS truth bomb. Call the Senate. The ACIP meeting beginning Thursday has a vague agenda in place for day one. The plan is to cover the entire vaccination schedule, and I suspect workshop all the ways they can blow it up. In my opinion, this will be a two-pronged attack on the measles, mumps, rubella MMR vaccine and the birth dose of the hepatitis B virus HBV vaccine, probably with a hefty dose of fear-mongering about aluminum salt adjuvants thrown in to lay the groundwork for future attacks on inactivated vaccines. I have been an editor at Vaccine since 2021, and as a result, I have watched a lot of ACIP meetings since becoming co-editor-in-chief on January 1st of this year. I have watched all of the ACIP meetings both before and after Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Junior fired the entire ACIP in June and replaced them with Levi Malone and their bumbling cohort of opportunistic anti-vaxxers. At every ACIP meeting this year, Hogue has represented the FDA and participated in the meetings as a non-voting agency liaison. It is a perfect opportunity to share the treasures she unearthed while dumpster diving in VEERS with other like-minded anti-vaxxers who are empowered to create policy that restricts vaccine access for millions of people, and who better to meet Hogue joyfully to assist in the mission to get COVID vaccines taken off the market than Levi and Malone. Levi chairs the COVID vaccines ACIP workgroup. At the last meeting, he presided over a day of COVID vaccine disinformation, during which he relentlessly fearmongered about vaccine safety and grossly overstated risks presented by mRNA vaccines. It culminated in votes on several nonsensical and unenforceable provisions that effectively did not really do much to alter COVID vaccine access because the current ACIP is demonstrably inept. Levi believes that mRNA COVID vaccines are deadly and they should be banned immediately. So I can see why he has got his ponytail in a bunch. Malone is a perennially bitter man who feels slighted that Malone is not properly recognized as the real inventor of mRNA vaccines. Malone is properly recognized as not the inventor because he did not invent them. You would think the wealth he has amassed from his Substack empire. His book, called War It, is about how the New World Order is seizing control of our minds through coercive public health campaigns, which he calls psychological bioterrorism. His witness testimony against vaccine manufacturers and his list status on the anti-vax conference and event tour circuit would be some consolation for not being credited for the achievement of someone else. However, it is not enough comfort, and Malone is constantly aggrieved. At the last ACIP meeting, he was like a poisonous mushroom with a beard emitting a bilious cloud of toxic negativity every time he made an unnecessarily furious remark about correlates of protection. Someone is mad they did not get nominated for Academy membership, but things are looking up for Team Ma because Malone is the big boy vice chair of ACIP. He has seen the evidence. Because it is politically explosive, it remains under top secret ACIP FDA embargo, but rest assured it is revolutionary, and it sure sounds like he is announcing that the big reveal will be at the ACIP meeting. Malone needs better prompts than Indian guy in a lab coat in front of FDA, because wow, does AI Vinay Prasad not look anything like actual Vinay Prasad. I am stunned by his letter below. The significance and importance of this letter in the context of US and global vaccine policy cannot be overestimated. This is a revolution the likes of which I never expected to see in my lifetime. ACIP Vice Chair Robert Malone and Levi both certainly sound like they are chomping at the bit to take the stunning evidence from FDA and run with it all the way to voting recommendations that will finish off COVID vaccines for good. Finally, no more censorship. No more vaccines for many people who want or need them either, but all revolutions require sacrifice, so be prepared to die from a preventable disease to serve this haughty science-coded mall Santa anti-public health sovereign citizen political agenda pro-vax. Thought police, your war is over. Viva la revolution. Malone even thinks this is ushering in a revolution that will transform public health by making no anti-vax talking point too taboo to manufacture evidence for no more of the double standards groupthink and epistemic capture. Malone and Levi are so concerned about from now on evidence-free policymaking can proceed unhindered in the federal government. If and when this comes up at the ACIP meeting, the panel will use this to justify developing recommendations that could be much more effective at removing access from COVID vaccines. While we have not yet seen the evidence, I am suspicious that its ad hoc presentation and the lack of transparency surrounding its collection and analysis will be sufficient to persuade many experts that it is definitive evidence of causation. However, this has already set a precedent. It certainly seems as though CBER, Hogue, and ACIP have collaborated on this finding and intend to use it for policymaking regardless of what an external or independent review might find. This approach can be extended if policy can be made with evidence that may exist but is analyzed in secret. Then why bother ensuring that the evidence is high quality? Why validate it? Why have transparency in making vaccine policy at all? It is a lot more convenient for loyalist appointees to make policy based on political objectives and just hand-wave about the evidence. It is supposedly based on both FDA and ACIP will try to mine viewers for optional evidence that other vaccines are suddenly unsafe and or ineffective as well, because this occurs within existing regulatory and policy-making frameworks, or at least the pretext of these frameworks. Since ACIP no longer follows theirs, there is a veneer of credibility to it today. Casual observer, it appears like boring government public health science policy in action, but it is not. This is ideological capture and corruption of democratic evidence-based best practices. It will get worse before it gets better. That is only if we do not raise hell about this approach to developing immunization policy or regulating vaccines, since they plan to use ACIP to credibility wash a justification for stripping access to COVID vaccines and probably attack the mRNA platform. In general, it is critically important for the public to not accept anything less than a full review of the evidence by qualified experts. Both the FDA and ACIP must be held accountable for their actions, whatever the evidence may show. For bird flu vaccine, inside the bird flu vaccine trial for monk seals after the virus returned to Hawaii this fall, testing the shots in the endangered seal species became urgent. Photo of one of 2 monk seals that received a bird flu vaccine at the Marine Mammal Center Kukai-Ola facility in Hawaii. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, December 1st, 2025. 2 wild Hawaiian monk seals, an endangered species, have become the first of their kind to receive vaccines for bird flu, part of a new effort to protect the animals from a virus that has been ravaging marine mammal populations around the world. The vaccinations represent the next phase of a small study that began this summer in northern elephant seals, which are not endangered. The vaccine appeared to be safe for elephant seals. The researchers found and prompted the marine mammals to begin making antibodies against the virus, which is known as H5N1. The quick move to include monk seals was also driven by the discovery that the virus had recently returned to Hawaii. The state remote location had previously helped protect the monk seals from the ongoing outbreak. If these first 2 seals continue to do well, and the antibody results are encouraging, that researchers may expand the vaccination effort in the long run. Dr. Horiski said the goal would be to vaccinate enough monk seals to stave off the sort of mass deaths that have been reported in southern elephant seals. Tens of thousands of southern elephant seals have already died from the virus. Scientists estimate this vaccine is a really important tool that we can potentially use to prevent that sort of catastrophic outbreak, she said. 5. Hepatitis B vaccine, the virus that took my father could become a greater threat. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, December 1st, 2025. The opinion writer is an emergency physician. My father did not know it, but by the time his urine had turned dark the color of tea, he had only a month or so to live. Until then he had seemed fine, at most a little tired. In the weeks before, a few days after his diagnosis, liver cancer from hepatitis B, he was dead. He was 35 years old. Had the hepatitis B vaccine existed back when my father was a child, I would not have lost a parent at such a young age. My mother left to raise us alone. Today the vaccine is recommended for all newborns in the United States, but I worry that this life-saving protection will soon be taken away as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is expected to vote on Friday on whether to undo the recommendation. Americans are on track not to have to worry about hepatitis B, but if the committee decides to derail our trajectory, I fear I will meet patients and their families shattered by it in the years to come, and when I do, I will tell them that I understand that I too lost someone to this disease. The cruel difference is that for them the science to prevent it will have been there all along. 6. Florida and Georgia, as well as Alabama, Indiana, and Texas Republicans are misreading what suburban voters want. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, December 2nd, 2025. The opinion piece was written by a lifelong Republican. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wants to abolish property taxes for homeowners in his state. Current Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to abolish them nationwide. Trump ally Elon Musk has spoken out against them, and a number of red states, including Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, and Texas, recently passed laws or constitutional amendments limiting them. Right-wing antipathy to property taxes is not new. Libertarians have long argued that they are the equivalent of paying rent to the government for property you already own. My own city, Carmel, Indiana, shows a new suburban sensibility. A city of 100,000 just north of Indianapolis, Carmel has been a Republican bastion for decades. It has made big investments in infrastructure, amenities, and public services. It has built more than 150 roundabouts, virtually eliminating traffic congestion. It has an extensive network of trails and parks and millions of square feet of office space. Republicans should be boasting about these successes and looking to Carmel as a model for other towns and cities. Instead, some of the most prominent Republicans in the country are waging war on the revenue model that powers them. In doing so, they pander to retired baby boomers who are eager to shift taxes away from their homes and onto those still working educated voters, including in the suburbs, have shifted strongly to the left over the past 20 to 30 years. Even Carmel-backed Kamala Harris in 2024. One of the causes is that Republican voters are increasingly alienated by state Republican parties that want to impose a Tea Party-style austerity governance model on them. They do not want their state to force them to live in a bare-bones community. Why would they vote for a party that promises to make their community worse by eliminating its main source of tax tax revenue? It is great that the Republican Party has expanded its reach to the working class, but it is not good to be losing the suburban professional one. This loss could come back to bite Republicans when Trump is no longer on the ballot to drive huge turnout among lower propensity and rural voters. It also sharply shrinks the talent base the GOP can draw on to staff government when it does win. What Carmel shows is that you can keep property taxes relatively low. They are capped by the Indiana Constitution, while still funding a robust set of public services. Carmel has focused public investment on delivering tangible goods and services, not excessive entitlements, bureaucratic activism, and other hallmarks of Blue America, so that the revenue collected from property taxes goes to improving the quality of life. Rhetoric around eliminating property taxes may play well with boomer retirees in the next political campaign, but actually doing so would be the Republican Party eating its demographic seed corn for the future while turning its back on a proven model of success and undermining local communities and the critical public services they rely on. 7 Georgia Ringgold RAWSEP view a Democrat to fill the Marjorie Taylor Greene seat. From the article headline, "We have become so divided, Georgia district prepares for life after Marjorie Taylor Greene." Republicans and Democrats alike look to fill House seat of the congressional firebrand when she departs in 2026. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, November 30th, 2025. Marjorie Taylor Greene for president? One Republican voter just does not think it will work. The Greene voters in Northwest Georgia are concerned about Kitchen Table. The winery business of one longtime Republican voter has been down 30% this year, which he attributes to economic conditions that are squeezing his customers. As a country, as individuals in America, you used to have some extra income after your bills and stuff, and you could splurge a little bit on this or that, go out to eat or something. Now by the time you pay your bills and stuff, from what I am seeing from the average people out here, there is nothing left over. That is the problem that needs solving, he said. 8 Tennessee Democrat Aftyn Behn versus Republican Mike Van Epps in race for a Tennessee House seat today, December 2nd, 2025. Johnson and Trump try to avoid an upset House loss in Tennessee. Speaker Mike Johnson put Trump on speakerphone during a Monday stop in the state, underscoring the unusual amount of national attention on a House special election. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, December 1st, 2025. The crowd milling around the sleek multi-million-dollar barn full of gleaming vintage cars was already a snapshot of the Republican elite in Tennessee. There were donors, state representatives, 5 members of Congress, the governor, and the candidate for the state House special election on Tuesday, Matt Van Epps. He was among those who pointed to one clip in which Ms. Aftyn Behn professed a hatred for Nashville and its downtown tourist scene of pedal taverns, country music, and bachelorettes as a sign that she is out of touch with the district. How the hell can you elect a person like that? Trump asked Ms. Behn. The opponent of Matt Van Epps, speaking to supporters on Monday, downplayed the criticism. National Republicans are panicking because the story of the South is changing, and they can see it happening right here, she said. Ms. Behn, for her part, spent the weekend canvassing with Democrats across the district and held a virtual rally with Ms. Ocasio-Cortez and former Vice President Al Gore, the last Tennessee Democrat to rise to the highest levels of national politics. Gore told the hundreds of supporters gathered on the Zoom call that Tennessee has proven again and again that we can answer the call of democracy, and that great cause of American democracy is calling us once again tomorrow. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez said that in a district so favored by Republicans, it takes a very special kind of person with a very special kind of guts to run as a Democrat. 9 Tennessee, what to watch for in the last big election of 2025. A special election for a House seat in Tennessee was supposed to be an easy Republican victory, but national spending and Democratic enthusiasm have made it an unusually high-profile race. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, December 2nd, 2025. Voters in Tennessee are set to provide the 2025 final big sign of where the political environment stands as the Trump approval ratings slip and Democrats grow more hopeful heading into the 2026 midterm elections. The state will hold a special House election on Tuesday for a seat that Republicans once thought was safe, but are now nervously defending. The race for the 7th congressional district has unexpectedly drawn outsized attention and a surge of spending from national groups. Trump has held multiple telephone rallies for the Republican nominee Matt Van Epps, including calling into an event on Monday that Speaker Mike Johnson attended. On the Democratic side, former Vice President Kamala Harris took time on a book tour stop in Nashville this month to urge people to vote for the party nominee Aftyn Behn and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and former Vice President Al Gore. Tennessee and held a telephone rally on Monday. Republicans are still favored to keep the seat, which Representative Mark Green abruptly vacated for the private sector in July, but they are nervous that Democratic enthusiasm elsewhere in the country could spill over into ruby red Tennessee and lead to a disquietingly narrow victory or a shock defeat. Can a liberal Democrat close the gap in ruby red Tennessee? Ms. Behn won the Democratic primary race with an unabashed record of progressive activism and policy positions that conventional political wisdom would say are far too liberal for a state that once elected more centrist Democrats. She has downplayed the Republican attacks as a sign that her campaign is surging. At least one clip in which she proclaims a hatred for Nashville and the pedal taverns and bachelorettes that populate downtown probably mirrors some local sentiment. 10 Virginia Democrat flips seat in state legislature by taking on data centers. John McAuliff won on November 4th, 2025 against a Republican by focusing on something affecting all his constituents, the cost of energy. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, November 30th, 2025. John McAuliff, a 33-year-old small business owner and former civil servant, was one of the more unlikely Democrats to win election to the Virginia legislature this month after a campaign in which he could at times come off a bit like a Republican. McAuliff was among the 13 Democrats elected to the legislature in the Virginia elections earlier this month as part of a blowout victory for the party that gives it firm control of the southern state government, along with wins in New Jersey, California, and elsewhere the results put some wind back into the sails of the Democrats nationwide a year after their drubbing at the hands of Trump and the Republicans. The Northern Virginia district of subdivisions, farmland, and quaint little towns that he sought to represent had not elected a Democrat to the House of Delegates in decades, so McAuliff would go door to door on an electric scooter informing those who answered his knocks that he was running to preserve their way of life, though he did not outperform Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat who romped to victory in the gubernatorial election. The McAuliff margin indicates he managed to sway some Republicans to choose him over Higgins, said Chaz Nuttycombe, the founder and executive director of State Navigate, a nonpartisan election tracker in Virginia. He ran ahead compared to other folks, and that would be because of him winning over Republican-leaning voters. 11 United Kingdom houseplants near radiators do not thrive. Heat pumps instead. RAWSEP view clean energy heat pumps heat a house evenly, and so should be ideal for houseplant life. Indoor residential wood burning may be the worst environment for houseplants since they only toast objects in front of them from one side, and the other side is exposed to cold, unheated air continuously, not to mention toasted skin syndrome for houseplant owners in a home heated in an unbalanced way from indoor residential wood burning from. The article headline: Houseplant hacks. How can I stop my plants dying when I turn on the central heating? Houseplants. The Guardian grouping plants together and placing them at least half a meter away from radiators and vents will help. Houseplant hacks. How can I stop my plants dying when I turn on the central heating? Ease your houseplants into winter by giving them a seasonal reset and moving them away from radiators. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, December 2nd, 2025. The problem: as soon as the heating is switched on, houseplants start to struggle. Warm, dry air strips moisture from leaves, dries soil faster, and turns cozy corners into arid microclimates. Many people mistakenly think radiator heat is similar to sunlight, warm and life-giving, but it is not. Sunlight provides energy for photosynthesis, while radiator heat is dry, stagnant, and relentless, closer to a slow cooker than sunshine. The hack: before turning on the heating, give your plants a seasonal reset. Move them away from radiators or vents at least half a meter, ideally group plants together to create a pocket of humidity, or place a bowl of water nearby to counteract dryness. Top dress tired soil with fresh compost. Trim off any yellowing leaves and wipe dust from the foliage so the plants can breathe water lightly. Then let them rest in bright indirect light to adjust before winter sets. In a humidifier that appears to be made of wood on a desk near a plant with large green leaves in front of a gray wall. Houseplant hacks. Do humidifiers really help houseplants? The method: you are easing them into a slower season as daylight hours decrease. Growth naturally slows, so plants need less food and water. By preparing them before the heating starts to blast, you minimize temperature shock and prevent that slow cook dehydration that sneaks up indoors. The test: last year, I skipped this ritual, and my calatheas crisped within weeks. This autumn, after a gentle reset and relocation, they are thriving. Leaves are supple, no brown edges in sight. The verdict: a small pre-heating ritual prevents plant carnage. Prepare them now, and you will not spend winter watching your greenery cook. 12 United Kingdom pollution from landfills. I kept smelling a horrible, nasty smell. The risks of the old dumping grounds of England. For some, the smell brings on nausea and headaches. Others fear forever chemicals seeping into the water. UK and European hidden landfills at risk of leaking toxic waste into water supplies. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, December 2nd, 2025. There are concerns that older landfills predating pollution laws may also contaminate groundwater, rivers, and even drinking water. At the former Commonside landfill in Cheshire last year, levels of polychlorinated biphenyl PCB, which have been linked to immune, reproductive, nervous, and endocrine harm, were found to be 1,000 times above UK norms. PCBs have polluted the area streams since the 1970s, and despite a fine being issued to the site owner in 1994, no cleanup followed. The council is now reassessing the site. It is a sham, says a local farmer who lives next door to the Commonside landfill, which closed in the 1970s. There is 750,000 tons of chemicals, rubble, and waste, and 50 different chemicals that have been tipped in there. He added that sludge regularly comes off the tip, causing him to worry it could pollute the drinking water. United Utilities, which manages water supply in the Northwest, said water quality has remained good. It added, since being made aware of concerns about PCBs in the area, we have conducted enhanced testing. These were also clear. We will continue to carry out these additional tests. 13 United Kingdom. The cost of pharmaceuticals. RAWSEP view Trump tariffs and jacking up the cost of pharmaceuticals to either the UK or the US or both. From the article headline: to avoid tariffs, UK agrees to the Trump demand to pay more for drugs. Trump has complained that wealthy countries like Britain pay too little for drugs, leading America to bear much of the burden of the cost of medicines. Trump has complained that wealthy European countries pay too little for medicines. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, December 1st, 2025. The United States and Britain announced a deal on Monday in which Britain would avoid potential tariffs on drug exports by agreeing to spend more on certain medicines covered through its National Health Service. In Britain, a public body uses a complex formula to determine whether and how much the government will pay for new drugs, part of a process that results in lower drug prices there compared with the United States. Trump and top officials in his administration have complained that wealthy European countries like Britain pay too little for medicines, forcing the United States to pay what they believe is an unfair share of the costs of drugs. American consumers ultimately bear some of those costs when they pay health insurance premiums. And taxes for months. Trump has been threatening to impose tariffs on imported medicines, and though he has not followed through on those threats, British officials have sought reassurances that their companies would get preferential treatment as part of a broad trade agreement. In May, the largest AstraZeneca, a multinational drug company with headquarters in Britain and Sweden, in October secured a 3-year reprieve from any U.S. pharma tariffs. Pfizer, Eli Lilly, and Novo Nordisk recently secured the same exemption. The Britain pharmaceutical manufacturing sector is important to its economy, though it makes only a small share of the overall supply of medicines in the world. The most important hubs for drug production in the world include India, China, the United States, and Ireland. Britain makes active ingredients for about 2% of medicines sold in the United States, according to U.S. Pharmacopoeia, a nonprofit that tracks the drug supply pharmaceutical companies stand to profit from the change. They share the Trump view that European countries like Britain are paying too little for medicines. The British government has been trying to end a standoff with these companies over pricing, including whether to lower a special rebate that companies pay to the health service for branded medicines to limit government overspend. Under the deal announced on Monday, that rate would be lowered to 15% next year, down from about 23%. These commitments begin to address industry concerns on NHS access to medicines and the UK record high and unpredictable payment rate. The chief executive of the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industry said this year several major companies have pulled back on investments in Britain, arguing that the country has become a less lucrative place to do business. In September, Merck said it would abandon plans to build a new lab in London, which was already under construction. The chief executive of Eli Lilly said Britain was probably the worst country in Europe for drug prices from the perspective of pharmaceutical companies. AstraZeneca has scrapped plans to upgrade a vaccine manufacturing site in Liverpool and a research lab in Cambridge, and instead emphasized large investments in the United States. One major frustration is that the percentage of the health budget of Britain devoted to drugs has dropped to about 9% from 12% in 2015. A British government minister told lawmakers in September it has just gone down steadily, and that has to be reversed. He said such a change would allow the government to ensure rapid uptake of the best new medicines and have more equitable access across the country, he said, but some researchers say Britain would be better off spending more on interventions like hip and knee replacements, which have been shown to provide greater health benefits for the same money, with the NHS budget being quite limited and constrained. The more we are spending on pharmaceuticals, the less we have available for other existing treatments and services, said the director of the Pharmaceutical Policy Lab at the London School of Economics. 14 headlines. The New York Times, December 2, 2025. New York City architecture opinion. Robert A.M. Stern designed New York City like a 1930s movie. The New York Times newspaper. Joe Kahn, New York Times executive editor, answers reader questions. The New York Times RFK Junior lack of knowledge of science and medicine. RAWSEP view. December 4th and 5th are when the RFK Junior appointed ACIP committee meets this week. From the article headline, Vaccine Committee may make significant changes to childhood schedule. The New York Times Science and Medicine. The U.S. is funding fewer grants in every area of science and medicine. The New York Times Trump Republicans opinion. Is there life for MAGA after Trump? The New York Times Ukraine. Putin and Witkoff meet in Russia as U.S. pushes Ukraine deal. The New York Times Ukraine army recruitment ads trace the evolution of the war. The New York Times Venezuela. Maduro faces his ultimate fight as Trump threatens military action in Venezuela. The New York Times. 15 headlines. The New York Times, December 1st, 2025. Air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. RAWSEP view. Does this story concern RAWSEP? From the article headline, many fighting climate change worry they are losing the information war. The New York Times Aviation Real ID TSA imposes $45 fee for travelers without real ID starting February 2026. The New York Times China evoking World War II. China urges Europe to take its side against Japan. The New York Times China apartment fire. Over 150 people have died. Hong Kong contractors used unsafe netting at fireside. Officials say. The New York Times consumers. The 2 best treadmills of 2025 reviews by Wirecutter. Electric vehicles. RAWSEP view. Self-driving vehicles good in a medical emergency? Not just good for ending gas-powered pollution, which is similar to indoor residential wood-burning pollution since both produce PM 2.5. From the article headline, opinion, the medical case for self-driving cars. The New York Times Florida Republican Governor DeSantis opinion, the problem with abolishing property taxes. The New York Times food recipe. Dark and stormy cookies recipe with video. Honduras. Trump alleges fraud without evidence in Honduras election. The New York Times Honduras. Trump becomes the wild card in razor-thin Honduras election. The New York Times Hungary. Why is Budapest the city of baths running out of bathhouses? The New York Times Japan opinion. The Japan new clarity on Taiwan is a wake-up call. The New York Times Mexico. Son of El Chapo pleads guilty to kidnapping the former cartel partner of father. The New York Times music preservation. The race against time to save music legends. Decaying tapes. The New York Times New York City Union Starbucks to pay $39 million in landmark New York City labor law settlement. The New York Times RFK Junior lack of knowledge of science and medicine. RAWSEP view bird flu and monk seals vaccine trial. Does this vaccine trial help humans acquire a bird flu vaccine also? From the article headline, inside the bird flu vaccine trial for monk seals. The New York Times RFK Junior lack of knowledge of science and medicine opinion. Why hepatitis B vaccine changes would be devastating. The New York Times RFK Junior lack of knowledge of science and medicine. RAWSEP view making drugs more expensive helps no one except Trump. From the article headline too. Avoid pharma tariffs. The UK agrees to the Trump demand to pay more for drugs. The New York Times Tennessee Democrat Johnson and Trump try to avoid an upset House loss in Tennessee. The New York Times Tennessee House Special Election 2025. What to watch. The New York Times Trump Department of Justice despite Supreme Court wins. Elite DOJ unit has seen mass turnover. The New York Times Trump no tax on tips excludes some businesses. RAWSEP view. Will this curb deepfake pornography? No. From the article headline for no tax on tips. The IRS gets intimate. The New York Times Trump pollution. Trump vowed fewer regulations and lots more oil. He has delivered on one. The New York Times Ukraine opinion. Ukraine is not a war of attrition. The New York Times Ukraine Putin to meet with Witkoff and Kushner as U.S. pushes for Ukraine deal. The New York Times Ukraine and Europe Zelensky turns to Europe after talks with U.S. officials. The New York Times, United Kingdom Trump tariffs. For some UK businesses, the Trump tariffs are a price worth paying. The New York Times, United Kingdom affordability. People are ordering smaller pizzas and fewer toppings. What does that tell us? The New York Times, United Kingdom justice right to jury trial in England and Wales to be restricted in some cases. The New York Times, Venezuela. For Trump, the Hegseth approach to Venezuela strikes is a growing liability. The New York Times, Venezuela. Hegseth ordered lethal boat strike, but not the killing of survivors. Officials say. The New York Times, Venezuela. Lawmakers suggest follow-up boat strike could be a war crime. The New York Times, Venezuela. Opinion: do not be fooled by the silence in the American backyard. The New York Times. 16 headlines. The Guardian, December 2nd, 2025. Artificial intelligence AI poses unprecedented threats. Congress must act now. Bernie Sanders. The Guardian, California. Ultra-processed food. California will beat RFK Jr. to the punch. San Francisco to sue food giants over ultra-processed products. Ultra-processed foods. The Guardian, Honduras. Trump frees ex-Honduran president from prison. As country awaits knife edge election result. Honduras. The Guardian, Mexico. RAWSEP view air pollution mostly from fossil fuel-powered industry. From the article headline, revealed the Mexico industrial boomtown is making goods for the U.S. Residents say they are breathing poison. Mexico. The Guardian, Taiwan. China is bearing down on Taiwan, enabled by the Trump weakness and vacillation. Simon Tisdall. The Guardian. Trump business allies Michael and Susan Dell donate $6.25 billion to encourage families to claim Trump accounts. U.S. News. The Guardian. Trump left-wing bias tracker. The White House new media bias tracker is a desperate gimmick. Margaret Sullivan. The Guardian. Trump Supreme Court allies John Roberts has badly weakened our democracy. Will he ever stand up to Trump? Stephen Greenhouse. The Guardian. TV. Jon Stewart on Trump claiming not to know about his own MRI. That is not physically possible. Late-night TV roundup. The Guardian. Ukraine. Witkoff in Moscow for talks as Putin claims to have taken key Ukrainian city. Ukraine. The Guardian. Ukraine. Putin says Russia not seeking war, but if Europe wants to fight, we are ready. Europe Live. United Kingdom TV star Ellen DeGeneres left the Trump America. Will the British weather force her to return? Arwa Madawi. The Guardian. Venezuela. The Trump full throttle threats suggest no backing down from aims to topple the Maduro regime. Venezuela. The Guardian. Venezuela. Pete Hegseth told U.S. soldiers in Iraq to ignore legal advice on rules of engagement. Pete Hegseth. The Guardian. 17 headlines. The Guardian, December 1st, 2025. Alcoholism, greenwashing wellness with addition of an 4 drip to alcohol consumption, 2 sip martinis, and 4 infusion drips. Soho House CEO on how wellness replaced hedonism. Health and well-being. The Guardian. Chile. Science and medicine. Life invisible. The fight against superbug starts in the driest place on earth. Documentary. Chile. The Guardian. Consumers regret. Why did I ever buy my kids refillable advent calendars? Zoe Williams. The Guardian. Georgia Democrat. We have become so divided. Georgia district prepares for life after Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene. The Guardian. Heat pumps. RAWSEP view clean energy heat pumps heat a house evenly, and so should be ideal for houseplant life. Indoor residential wood burning may be the worst environment for houseplants since they only toast objects in front of them from one side, and the other side is exposed to cold, unheated air continuously, not to mention toasted skin syndrome. For houseplant owners in a home heated in an unbalanced way from indoor residential wood burning. From the article headline, Houseplant hacks. How can I stop my plants dying when I turn on the central heating? Houseplants. The Guardian. Japan catchphrase of the year. The Prime Minister PM pledge to work, and work wins catchphrase of year. Sanai Takaichi. The Guardian. Movie Ping Pong. Marty Supreme review. Timothy Chalamet, a smash in spectacular screwball ping pong nightmare movies. The Guardian. Music. Professional Santas. I cannot hear Mariah Carey for the 1000th time. Professional Santas on their most loved and hated Christmas hits. Music. The Guardian. Music. Spain. Shells found in Spain could be among oldest known musical instruments. Archaeology. The Guardian. Myanmar. Internet scams. Age of the scam state. How an illicit multi-billion-dollar industry has taken root in Southeast Asia. Cybercrime. The Guardian. New York City Union. We are not going anywhere. How unionization whirlwinds set stage for historic Starbucks strike. U.S. unions. The Guardian. RFK Junior lack of knowledge of science and medicine. Mansplaining was once a contender for word of the year. Here is why we should stop using it. Zoe Williams. The Guardian. Romania. Politics. Literature. I took literary revenge against the people who stole my youth. Romanian author Mircea Cartarescu. Fiction. The Guardian. Trump aviation. How the Trump on again off again NASA appointee emerged from a political black hole. NASA. The Guardian. Trump aviation. Trump reverses course to renominate billionaire Musk ally to lead NASA. The Guardian. Trump Epstein fallout. As Epstein files release looms, questions abound on what happens next. Possibilities are endless. Jeffrey Epstein. The Guardian. Trump FBI under Kash Patel has become internally paralyzed by fear. New report reveals FBI. The Guardian. Ukraine. U.S.-Russia talks may pile pressure on Kyiv to make concessions, says EU foreign policy chief. Ukraine. The Guardian. Ukraine war briefing. Witkoff shuttles into Moscow to hear the Putin demands. Ukraine. The Guardian. United Kingdom pollution. I kept smelling a horrible nasty smell. The risks of the England old dumping grounds waste. The Guardian. Venezuela radar revelation stokes fears Caribbean could be drawn into U.S.-Venezuela crisis. Trump administration. The Guardian. Venezuela. Trump news at a glance. Tensions with Venezuela rise following the Trump reported ultimatum to Maduro. Trump administration. The Guardian. Venezuela. White House distances Hegseth from second strike on alleged drug. Vote U.S. Politics Live. Virginia Democrat data center opposition. Virginia Democrat flips seat in state legislature by taking on data centers. Virginia. The Guardian.
Red Green Fox here. The quick red green fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red Green Fox here. Ready to sing to you the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1. Biofuel Watch. 2. Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3. Comite Schoen Lucht, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4. Dogwood Alliance. 5. Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6. Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7 Natural Resources Defense Council nicknamed NRDC, 8 per county and NARZEX Wysokie Isted, which means workshop for all beings in Polish, 9 Rachel Carson Council, 10 solutions for our climate nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.